Our next guest is a Grammy Award-winning rapper, activist, and half of the hip-hop duo Run the Jewels. Please welcome back to the show, Killer Mike. Thank you so much for being here.
Seth, how you doing, brother?
I'm doing well. Thanks for being here so late. You were at least comfortably at home, yes?
No, I'm actually in the studio. I owed some guest verses out, so I'm working the late shift. I'm working third shift at UPS like when I was 19. I'm in the studio all night.
Hey, while we're there, and I know it will pale in the significance of everything we're going to talk about tonight, but I do want to say Run the Jewels put out a great album last year, and you should have been nominated for a Grammy, and you were robbed. And I'm going to leave it at that.
I'm going to strongly co-sign, and thank you for being a believer in us. And with that said, the people who were nominated for Best Rap Album of the Year all were deserving, and Run the Jewels definitely should have been Album of the Year. So I agree. Maybe next year we'll try again.
You know what? I would expect nothing less from you too. So, last night was obviously a night of great optimism, a night to celebrate, and I want to talk about what was accomplished in Georgia. But I also want to ask, on a day when it seemed like that would be what the news cycle was, obviously it was ripped away based on the incident, the activities that happened in D.C. What was your reaction to what you saw in D.C.?
Well, my reaction was I woke up knowing that Georgia had done a heck of a job, that everyone from the hip-hop community in Atlanta and throughout the state had worked their butt off. They had worked their butt off. The progressives from 16 forward, they worked their butt off in alliance with Keisha, worked their butt off in alliance with Stacey. What I really respected about the integrity, though, of my state, beyond people you think I would typically agree with, I was very pleased to see the integrity of our Governor Kemp and of Brad Raffensperger, our Secretary of State, because when they called it for Biden, they called it honest, they called it fair. And I respected the fact that my state did the right thing. The state went blue. Republicans in the state didn't try to get in the way of it. It happened. So I woke up on a high. I woke up knowing that Warnock had won, pretty sure that Ossoff was going to be called a winner. I woke up understanding that my community, hip hop community, had helped put them there in big part. And I got a call from my 13-year-old a few hours ago that, Dad, this stuff was happening at the Capitol. And it led me into a longer conversation with her about how I admired the fact that she participated in the political process by paying attention. I admired the fact her 18-year-old brother had voted for the first time. And I really wanted her to understand that the people that are at the Capitol, although I encourage protest for any American, right, I don't encourage what we saw. And essentially, it is violence, it is evil, it is I didn't get my wayism, it is the refusal to accept that this republic is ran by the power of the vote, and people have voted an older president out and the president-elect in, and we need to accept that. And I thought that it was a great time to teach her about civics and to teach her that what we have done in this state is more important than this ugly moment. And I hope that all Americans plot, plan, strategize, organize, and mobilize for a union post this. We've done the Civil War once. It didn't work out well for the region I grew up in the South, and it didn't work out well for this nation as a whole. We repaired past that, although we didn't do the perfect repair we deserved. We are on our way to a more perfect union, but it will only happen if we use times like these as a way to cooperate and collaborate for the betterment of this republic instead of displaying the type of behavior that we saw today.
Many people were drawing the distinction today on social media between the police presence that was at the Capitol today, knowing full well that there was going to be this rally, with the police presence that was in place during Black Lives Matter protests in D.C. This summer, during the protests this summer. What were your thoughts when you saw what looked to be a pretty clear difference?
We know that that justice is lopsided. We know that. There has been this example and dozens more, and I would argue hundreds more. The question for me becomes, at what point do we have to keep using these stark examples versus doing something about it? At what point do we encourage the demilitarization of police, period? At what point do we live out what the people thought they thought that they were doing what was a free people doing right by a republic? At what point do we want that for everyone? Noam Chomsky said, if you don't believe in free speech for those you disagree with, you don't believe in it at all. And I am, as I grow older, understanding that clearer and clearer. It is not only my right to like the stuff I like, it's my right, and it's everyone's right to have to accept the fact that people have the right to say, people have the right to do, so long as they aren't harming others. And in this country, if we're ever going to be fair, we have to call the BS where it is. Today, what happened was BS versus what happened over the summer. And at some point as a republic, we're going to have to cooperate and collaborate with those that we disagree with for the betterment and a more perfect union in this republic. And until we do that, honestly, until we want for others what we want for ourselves, we will repeat this cycle over and over again, and will make us inept.
You mentioned, how the hip hop community was a large part of the activism and, the voter registration in Georgia. And, we were talking to Mayor Bottoms this summer, and, I had just seen her speaking with you, with T.I., during some of the protests in Atlanta. And she mentioned that you all went to the same high school. What is it like having this relationship with the mayor of your city?
Man, Frederick Douglass High School. Let me tell you, 70% of the schools in Atlanta are named for Black educators or emancipator. We went to Frederick Douglass High School with Frederick Douglass Astros. I want to shout out Dr. Samuel Hill, who's in his 80s and still around, who's my principal, and Dr. Lester Butts, who's the principal before him, was my mom's principal. There's a tradition of creating excellence in this high school. Keisha Lance Bottoms, T.I., Killer Mike, Chief Judge Joshua Jackson in DeKalb County, Michael Julian Bond, City Council person, Cameron Dollar, former national champion UCLA and coach out in Seattle, Stanley Pritchard, Robert Hicks, my best friend since kindergarten, whose mom, Miss Hicks, was the school secretary. It really was a small town vibe in the midst of a big city. It produced excellence. We were taught from the day we got there, without struggle, there is no process. There is no progress. And Frederick Douglass also said it's easier to build strong children than repair broken men. He was an amazing author and orator. We were raised in his lineage and image, and I'm proud to be a Frederick Douglass Astro. And I also want to say, beyond just our mayor, who's an amazing Black woman, and beyond Stacey Abrams, who went to Spelman, my sister college, I went to Morehouse, who's an amazing Black woman. I want to make sure Nina Turner, who's going to be running for Congress out of Ohio, gets her props. She's the person that pushed me to push Bernie Sanders to support Stacey Abrams. Stacey Abrams was pushed, and although she did not get a chance to be the governor of Georgia, she's a big part of the reason that this state turned blue. Her, Keisha, Warnock, Ossoff, myself, the hip hop community. But I don't want to leave out someone who's not in Georgia, but definitely has the cut to be, and that's Nina Turner. So I want to encourage people to get behind her in Ohio, and let's make sure that she gets to Congress as well.
All right, we'll be right back with more Killer Mike after this.